Good morning. This is Mike Walker from Simply God Ministries, and welcome to Coffee Talk. I don't have a big message for you this morning, but I do want to share something. I was reading in Acts chapter 5 this morning, and it's talking about how the apostles had been taken to the Sanhedrin, and they were flogged for spreading the gospel. And the part that amazed me is they left from being flogged and were rejoicing. They had just been beaten and they were rejoicing. That's because they were being beaten for spreading the gospel. They're so happy, how happy they was to spread the gospel no matter what was going to happen to them. They wanted to get that word out there. You know, sometimes we won't tell people about God just because we're too embarrassed to. It's almost like we're ashamed of being Christians. And, you know, that makes absolutely no sense to me, because as I was reading this in, these people were actually beaten. They were flogged for spreading the gospel. And and they left with joy and happiness because they endured that for God. Now, shouldn't we be ashamed of ourselves that we won't do it just because we might turn a little red-faced? You know, that's a bad commentary on modern society. And they were being persecuted for spreading the gospel, and they left joyfully from being flogged. You know that had to hurt, but they were glad to endure it just because they endured it for God, for teaching the gospel of God. Shouldn't we be more like that? No matter what I'm going to get from it, what kind of persecution I'm going to get, I'm going to preach the gospel, and not just, and what I teach is not the popular version of the gospel either. By a non-religious point of view, what I'm teaching is not very popular. You know, because I talk against religion, the same that the apostles did back in the day against the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin. So preach and teach the word. You know, the Bible tells us, study to show yourself approved. Study that Bible. Teach it as God reveals it to you. We're all commissioned. It was so important to Jesus. He was leaving earth, never coming back, or not coming back to these people for a long, long period of time. And he'll stand before the disciples and telling them to go into all the lands and preach the gospel. You know, imagine that you're laying in your deathbed. God forbid, but you're laying in your deathbed, and your family is gathered all around you. And you know this is going to be the last thing that you say to your family. You're going to want to make those words the most important words that you can. The most important thing to you is what you're going to try to teach them. Well, Jesus did the same thing. before he was leaving the face of this earth. And he says, "Oh, can you do this for me? This is so important. Go into all the lands and preach the gospel." Now, that's how important that is to him. Shouldn't that be that important to us too? To preach the truth. Not the gospel, the watered down gospel that religion wants you to teach. Not just browbeating somebody and teaching them what's wrong like other religions want you to teach, but teach the whole gospel. Reading Acts chapter 5, first you read about Ananias and Sapphira. They were struck down dead for cheating God. Now that's a God of vengeance. And then you keep on reading down, and it talks about how people were healed in His name. That's another side of God. That's God the healer and the God of love. And then you read a little bit further, and you read about these apostles that saw the good and bad side of God. Both. Well, not bad, but what most people would think to be bad. But they saw both sides, and they were gladly beaten for them. That's powerful love when you say, "Hey, I know what you can do to me, but hey, I'm going to sit here and tell you that I love this man that died for me, and I will gladly take it for him too. He took it for me, so I would take it for him, because I know my death is gain, that I would just have a home in heaven after I die." Now that's a pretty powerful word. So I want to ask you all to not hide your faith, and remember God loves you, and I love you too. Peace.